In Afghanistan in the summer of 2021, a suitcase containing more than $1 billion was robbed by a group of assassins, but during the process of transporting it to the rendezvous point, it was lost due to a plane crash and the assassin tried to find the body, but the suitcase accidentally fell into the hands of a beautiful, fragile, extremely sexy hunter. From here on, the chase officially began. This mountain climbing man named Jackson specializes in being a hunting guide, or in other worlds, another is a professional hunter. He was climbing mountain while constantly remembering the image of his happy family of 3. At this time, a phone call came to his friend who said he had a customer who wanted to go elk hunting and made an appointment to meet. They met at Jackson Motel, finished the deal and returned home to prepare for the hunting trip, but sadly, they saw his wife baking potatoes for the wretched neighbors. Even more, she wanted to punch that bad boy. I rushed to intervene again. The two of them argued back and forth, then suddenly the male lead ate a pan right away. His heart was so miserable, but what could he do now? Jackson had to drive to the rendezvous point with his friend in front of the motel, accidentally picking up a little girl teddy bear and dropping it. This image reminded him of the lovely bother of apricot wine at home. The male lead went up to the room and while opening the door, he saw an extremely beautiful girl coming out of the room. Next to them, they looked at each other for a long time. Then he put his things in his room. The scenery. A group of assassins were looking for a missing suitcase of money. It seemed that when the plane crashed, the pilot was carrying the suitcase of money. Jackson escaped to a bar in town in the late afternoon when he suddenly saw the beautiful girl he met at the hotel earlier. They both looked at each other with eyes of attachments that never let go of this beautiful girl, whose name was Khoi Gunner, working as a waitress. Then the owner was helping him order. She accidentally spilled the customer drink and quickly sat down to clean up. And this image reminded him of his daughter when she made milk in the kitchen. Jackson helped his daughter clean up and played around with her. Suddenly, a friend's voice called him back to reality. He asked about the wound on his friend's head, telling a joke. It turned out to be a man. This guy at the boss of the guy who had an affair with his wife and offered to fire that guy, but Jackson refused, because it was his own problem. He wanted to handle it himself. Jackson returned to the motel to clean the shotgun, to prepare for the trip tomorrow when suddenly he heard a struggle outside. He opened the door and saw that he was being harassed by a tall ram man. He saw him walking with two guns. He was about to put his hand in his pant and immediately CUC without daring to say a word. He must have died. The next day he drove to meet the postman who had made an appointment and planned to go hunting. Coincidentally, the customer gave him a kiss. That the ending. Then each person rides a house into the forest and on the way to the ending, proactively tell the male lead that the reason he wants to hunt elk is because his father promised to take her hunting, but unfortunately he passed away before fulfilling her promise. She is now doing it for him. She promised to always carry her father's ashes with her and will take them down when the hunt is successful. However, Jackson has been silent since then. He reminded her not to talk, because the noise will alert the prey who will soon arrive at the resting place. The male lead showed her the tent where they will stay tonight and I went to prepare dinner. At this time, the assassin group was still looking for the pilot. The man along with the suitcase of money went missing while next to the fire. The two of them were discussing the hunting schedule for the day after Tet and suggested splitting up to have a higher chance of shooting elk, but the male lead did not agree because this is a guided hunting trip. He will not shoot but only guide and will ensure her safely and assist when needed. At this time, Jackson memories suddenly appeared when he and his beloved daughter. I was playing football in the yard and my wife was by my side cheering. Oh, a family of 3 looked very happy, but it was so sad. Suddenly he threw the ball far away. So his little daughter ran into the street to pick up the ball. Then an accident happened. He lost her forever. That pain probably tormented the male lead heart until now. Early the next morning, the two of them set out to hunt but could find their prey, so they once again proposed to separate, but was refused. Meanwhile, the assassin group was still hunting for the suitcase of money nearby. They continued walking and discovered quite new footprint, so Jackson guessed that there were a few elk on the top of the mountains. At this time, tired from the trip, Jackson had to go up the mountain alone to continue observing. As expected, there was a group of there, but he also discovered a few unusual things. Jackson used binoculars to observe and immediately discovered a group of elk. The man was hanging in the distance. The male lead reloaded his shotgun and then started to check, only to find that this man had long since died and at his feet was a suitcase full of bullets. Jackson hesitated for a while and then took his suitcase to leave, but at this time there was a gunshot echoing. Worried that something had happened, so the hunter rushed to look for her and it turned out that she was just missing her prey. It was already dark. The two returned to the barn, waiting for tomorrow hunting trip. Jackson seemed suspicious of this girl purpose, so he asked her if she really came here to hunt elk and find her father remains. He received the answer that she just wanted her father to rest in peace. He kept tormenting himself that he was not a good father, and after saying that, she immediately left. The stranger girl story reminded him of himself, remembering the obsession of losing a child that still cannot be overcome. In the early morning of the next morning, Ket woke up wearing a thin shirt and sexy underwear and walked out of the tent, making the male lead feel a bit confused in his crotch. Jackson advised her to put on some clothes because the cold wind could make both of them roll together, but in the end, she said this was just a habit and she drank it while she was making coffee to drink when the group of assassin arrived. When he discovered them, he opened fire with his gun. Jackson quickly shot down a few of them, then they both ran away because they were still very light dressed with only a pair of underwear on, so they had to stop and wait for her, put on more pants at this time. Jackson told about how he found a suitcase of money yesterday, which must also be the reason why the group of assassin considered both as targets and hunted them down. They agreed to split the money later. When escaping here, Jackson came up with a plan. He gave her the gun and he used the pellet to lure two approaching motorcycle camp assassin. When they appeared, she immediately shot and killed them, but at this time, the ending also fell into the hands of another assassin. He asked the male lead to put down his gun and backpack immediately. He pretended not to understand, but took the opportunity to shoot down the guy in cold blood. They continued to encounter a few guys. It seems like the hunter is a sharpshooter. Jackson shoot them down in an instant, causing the female lead to exclaim in surprise, "Who are you to come here?" The male lead wants her to go alone. It wouldn't be safe that way. But she didn't agree. She wanted him to ensure her safety until she got out. The male lead had served in the Navy very well for most of his life, so he was very excited. Regarding weapons, the fact that the assassin group uses these guns proves that they are a professional force. If they go together, it will be very dangerous, and above all, he has no trust in anyone. But the female lead still begs, wanted to go with him because he was scared, but of course the male lead couldn't refuse with such a lovely face. They continued to find a way out of the forest, but unfortunately encountered the cliff of death. Jackson decided to climb. He jumped up and pulled her and her backpack up. Now he felt that they were being chased by danger, so he was more urgent than ever. The male lead tied the seatbelt on her and started climbing up the cliff behind them. Is the poke-headed murderer still in pursuit? When she was nervously watching the hunter climb step by step, the poke-headed guy put a gun right behind her, suddenly turned around, hit him and left the camp. But because she was tied to the rope was tied to Jackson, so she was grabbed by the bad guy and pulled back. As she was preparing to send the beautiful girl back to God, the male lead was able to pull her and provide cover fire to climb up. Who would have excited the bullet from the first guy? He poked the thread through her leg, causing a slight cut. The two crossed the mountainside and continued moving forward, but Jackson discovered that she was injured, so he asked to stop to check. The male lead pulled her pants up to see if the bullet were fired. In the end, she decided to quickly take off from above when she took off her pants, causing the male lead population increased gun to immediately be loaded with bullets. But he was alert and took out the first aid box from his backpack to treat the wound. However, the two continued to move when it was dark and decided to hide the suitcase in a bare tree in the forest, according to their plan. Jackson would climb up and thread the rope into the tree trunk while she would wait below to tying the suitcase to it. The two coordinated very well together, and the suitcase also seemed safe and hoped they would see it again. It was already dark and the two had gone quite a distance when Jackson threw his backpack. I went down to the river with the purpose of distracting the group of assassin and then continued walking until dawn while enjoying the beautiful scenery of the sunrise when they continued to encounter the female assassin of her gang in the two-person killer drama. Paralyzed, while the two ran for their lives to an abyss, they jumped into the rushing water and followed the current to escape, making the assassin angry and ordered her accomplices to search all river banks. However, after a while the two of them were able to escape to the main road. At this time, they were lucky enough to meet the friend he had talked to before at the bar. He gave them a lot of credit. But life could not be predicted. He suddenly knocked the male lead unconscious, then used a gun to threaten the car. The old man target was also Bala Money, so he arrested them both for questioning. It turned out that the dead pilot was his friend and they should have picked him up. He got a lot of money in the world but was about to be taken away by Jackson while being questioned by his father. The male lead also opened lock B with the skills of a veteran, killed the old man, then immediately went to find him. The group of assassin had just arrived here and saw that the killer was still glaring in the room, so Jackson immediately saved her. However, they immediately encountered the assassin and the evil prankster Jackson tried to stop the bastard. She had time to escape, but the female assassin was still following her from behind while Jackson and the guy teased that she had successfully attacked the female assassin, causing her to drop the gun on the ground alone. After a while, the ending quickly changed the gun to help the male lead catch the broken guy. Hello bad guy. The two looked at each other for a long time and decided to go back into the forest to get the suitcase containing $1 billion and the box for her father remains at the location. The tree where they hid the money Jackson checked and saw that the money was still intact, so he didn't leave as a precaution and asked her why she learned to shoot martial arts and horseback riding when she had never hunted with her father before. At this moment, she pulled out her gun. The gun was in the box so he could shoot the male lead in the middle of the stomach and then use the gang to contact gang. It turned out that she was also an assassin and Jackson just to help deal with the enemies, and he did the right thing. According to what they wanted, she finished off Jackson and then took her suitcase and left before she died. He asked her about trust, but it seemed like that was something that didn't exist for female assassin. Human trust is truly too expensive, so be careful to give it to the right person, especially girl who suddenly come here and need to get to know each other, so they show off their bodies for everyone to see. Don't believe me?